The genre of my story is mystery, and the title of my story is The Burning Agenda. As Mihir was arriving on the scene, it was already 3 hours when the crime had taken place. As he neared the place, he took out gloves from his backpack and quickly put them on. Mihir was nervous, as he had never solved such an interesting yet intricate case ever before. He had a 3-year work experience and had solved more than 100 cases. Even his superiors were jealous of him. As he quietly yet briskly walked towards the scene of crime, his attention was diverted by a police officer, who seemed to call Mihir towards him. As Mihir saw the officer, he rerouted and went towards him. It was Mr. Patil, Mihir's fellow assistant in every case. The officer laid out his hand to shake hands with the detective of the case, Mihir. Then he headed back towards the scene location. As, as he reached the crime scene, he met his fellow assistants, shook hands with them, and without further ado, directly went to observe the dead body. The body of the man The body of the man was lying still and lifeless as though a silent stream. The area that the crime had occurred in already had vast history of felonies. Nearing the dead body, he smelled a foul and pungent smell which he had smelled before. Observing the dead body from all over, he was able to make specific notations about the killer's instincts. The way the killer would have planned the killing and would have brought it into implementation was amazing, Mihir thought. He told Mr. Patil to call the relatives and the knowns of the victim. Later, the police did as they were instructed. Relatives came and their enquiries started. Mihir observed each and every one of the people. While observing, he came across the victim's spouse and was dazzled by the way the lady gave weird facial expressions. He was not able to make out whether the lady was happy or sad and disturbed. He could sense something was unusual, so he directly confronted her and asked the lady if she was alright. She faced Mihir and nodded her head in an affirming way. Mihir could sense something was wrong. He directly asked her whether something was wrong with her and her husband. She acted like she didn't hear at all. Sweat drops from her head started dripping like wet cloth. It signaled to Mihir that she was nervous and rather afraid to open up. He touched her shoulder to calm her down. Then he asked her the same question again. This time she responded differently and told him rather in a calmer voice that things were very hard between her and her husband. So she said that he had been drinking a lot and also taking up drugs. That was the main cause for arguments between them. Mihir observed Rupali, the dead man's wife, very well and kept notice of each and every behavioral change. Then he let her go. The tiresome day ended. Mihir went home and had dinner, and just as he was about to head towards his bedroom, he heard a firm knock on his door. It was past 11. He tried to look through the peephole to find out who was there, but no one was seen. He picked up a government licensed pistol from table beside and quickly opened the door. To his surprise, it was the victim's wife, Rupali. He quickly lowered his aim and invited her in. She came and sat and quickly turned towards Mihir. She told him that she thought she knew someone who would have possibly killed her husband. She told him that her husband was a business owner and had a partner who was handling the business along with him. They had both invested huge sums of money into business and he was the one who wanted profit out of it and maybe he killed her husband. Mihir was still connecting dots when a strange thought came up his mind and he found out strange that an stranger came to his house without being called, but he ignored it. As Rupali, the victim's wife, left, Mihir went to his room and jotted down all the questions that came up in his mind. Mihir didn't want to accept it, but a thought that the man's wife, Rupali, was his killer itself came into his mind again and again and again. He was frustrated and confused, yet tried to remain calm. The next day, Mihir went to meet the man's business partner. During the interrogation process, he kept observing the man's movements to notice if anything was suspicious at all. But surprisingly, it seemed that the man was actually in the USA for the past week and had just arrived on the day the incident occurred. He confessed that he surely wanted profits but would have never killed the man for that. He was believable, Mihir thought. Mihir noted that the man's business partner was okay. His mind kept telling him that he should interrogate the victim's wife, which is Rupali, one more time, just for the sake of satisfaction for his mind. He went to the woman's house directly after interrogating the man's business partner. He rang the bell and waited, but no response came. He rang the bell again, but no response came, this time too. So he decided to check the backyard door. Just as he was about to go check, he heard some voices coming towards his direction. He got alarmed and quickly hid himself in a big lump of grass nearby. Soon, the people speaking were visible. It was the Rupali and some other man, possibly her brother. They hugged and talked. The lady mentioned Mihir's name to the strange man. The man resembled somewhat similar to Mr. Patil, who was his assistant in the case. Surprisingly, Mihir heard a demonic laugh from victim's brother who came closer to the victim's spouse and whispered something to her in her ear and left. Soon after the man left, Mihir quickly got up, changed his plans and paced away from house. He tried to remember who the man resembled and he though thought that the face of man resembled Mr. Patil's face. The next day when Mihir saw Mr. Patil, the first thing he asked him was if he was anyhow related to the victim or Rupali. Mr. Patil shrugged his shoulders and moved his neck in an affirmed way. He told he was sorry for not letting him know this earlier. He was the victim's wife's cousin. Mihir got angry and scolded Mr. Patil for being dishonest and demanded that he be inquired too. So, then the police took Mr. Patil to the police station for an inquiry. Just as the inquiry was in its initial stage, Mihir entered. He looked at Mr. Patil with disappointment but then somehow managed to talk to Mr. Patil. He started investigating Patil and asked a couple of questions about where he was when this incident happened. And he just realized that both of them were together in a club enjoying and celebrating the success of the last case they solved together. During investigation, Mr. Patil somehow managed to direct Mihir back towards victim's wife, Rupali. He added and forced things to Mihir about his relation with Rupali, which he stated was not so good. Also, he stated that Rupali, the victim's wife, had married for the second time, and also that Rupali was not happy about their relationship with her husband. Also, there was some fight related to husband's estate. Since Mr. Patil was a good friend and subordinate of Mihir, and they both were together, he believed the statement given by Patil. Once the enquiry was over, Mr. Patil was allowed to go home, and Mihir went too. It was getting dark, and Mihir was too tired to think about anything at all. So once he returned home, he took off his shoes and directly sat on the sofa in the living room. He was so tired he dozed off to sleep. While in sleep, he was able to recollect the success memories of the previous case. When suddenly he got a random memory when Mr. Patil and he himself were in club and Mr. Patil wanted to go to the bathroom, so asked for leave. He said he would return in 10 minutes but didn't return for 1 whole hour. Mihir was tired that day and didn't give it much thought, but now he remembered it and he woke up with a shock. The crime had taken place in a similar time span. Mihir got up quickly at this hour at night, wore shoes, freshened up, and left quicker than ever. He took 3 policemen with him and went over to Mr. Patil's home. He knocked multiple times, but there was no reply. Quickly, after 2 minutes, the police heard gunfire from above. Mr. Patil was firing downwards towards police from the first floor of his house. The police had enough ammo to fight against Mr. Patil. The police surrounded Mr. Patil's home and some went inside. After a while, he was captured and brought out. Seeing Mihir, he quickly dropped his gun and ran towards him. Bowing down, he pleaded and told that seeing police at his door frightened him. And so, as a retaliation, he fired. Mihir ordered police to catch him and take him to the station. When at the station, Mihir told him about the memory which he had dreamt. Mr. Patil agreed about it, but said that he was gone because a robber was trying to rob a man's suitcase. But soon, Mihir revealed that the forensic results were out too, and that everything matched Mr. Patil. Mihir told Mr. Patil to accept everything or else he would have to face more and more punishments from the law in the future. Finally, Mr. Patil let out a huge cry and agreed everything and told Mihir everything he had done. He started crying and begging Mihir to help him get out of the jail and out of all the punishments. But Mihir rejected that wish of his. He got up and left the place. All the details were then soon reported to the high office superiors, and Mr. Patil was sentenced to life imprisonment and was also fined. Thus, Mihir solved another case. Thank you.